In 2024, Tobias Crane checked into a mountain retreat to find himself. 3 days later, he vanished. No exit record. No belongings taken. Just a note in his handwriting. "I don't want to come back." But his wife swears he didn't write it, and the detective assigned to the case is starting to forget who she is. What happened inside Elevation Retreat wasn't therapy. It was something designed to erase you. Hit subscribe to get notified when new strange disappearances, haunted cold cases, and reality-bending investigations drop. Because some people don't vanish, they get rewritten. The handwriting was Tobias Crane's, but the words felt like they belonged to someone else entirely. Detective Vera Castellanos held the crumpled note under the fluorescent light of the police station, reading it for the 7th time in 2 hours. "I don't want to come back." 5 words, scrawled in blue ink on hotel stationery from the Elevation Retreat Center. Found in Tobias's empty room 3 days after the self-help weekend ended, after every other participant had checked out and driven home to their normal lives. Tobias hadn't. "His wife's downstairs again," Officer Valdosta said, appearing in the doorway. "Says she's not leaving until we classify this as a missing person." Vera folded the note carefully. 48 hours wasn't technically long enough for an adult missing person case, but something about this one felt wrong. Not just the note, the retreat center itself. She'd driven past it twice in the last week, both times getting an odd sensation in her stomach. The building looked normal enough. Converted ski lodge nestled in the Cascade foothills. Large windows facing the forest, inspirational banners hanging from the eaves. But there was something about the way it sat in the landscape, like it was waiting. "Tell Mrs. Crane I'll be down in 5 minutes, Vera said. Celeste Crane looked exactly like what central casting would order for a worried wife. Dark circles under red-rimmed eyes, hands that couldn't stay still, a purse clutched so tightly her knuckles had gone white. She sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair across from Vera's desk and spoke in bursts, like she was trying to get all the words out before they disappeared. "He wasn't himself when he left for the weekend. I mean, that's why he went, right? To work on himself. But Tobias doesn't just disappear. He calls me 3 times a day when he travels for work. He leaves lists when he goes to the grocery store." Vera pulled out a fresh notepad. "Tell me about the retreat." It was called Breakthrough. Discover Your Authentic Self. Some company called Metamorphosis Seminars. Tobias found it online. Said he'd been feeling stuck, like he was living someone else's life. Celeste's voice cracked. "I should have been enough. I should have helped him feel better about himself." "This isn't your fault, Mrs. Crane." "How did he seem when he left?" "Nervous. Excited. He kept saying it was going to change everything. That he was going to come back a different person." She paused. "I guess he meant it literally." Vera made a note. "Did he call you during the weekend?" "Friday night after he checked in. Said the place was beautiful, very peaceful. The other participants seemed nice. There were maybe 20 people total." Celeste pulled a tissue from her purse. "That was the last time I heard his voice." "And you called the retreat center?" "Saturday and Sunday. They said participants weren't allowed phone contact during sessions, for maximum focus. Then Monday morning I called and they said everyone had checked out. But Tobias never came home." Vera leaned back in her chair. "Mrs. Crane, did your husband have any history of depression? Suicidal thoughts?" "Never. That's what makes this so strange." Tobias was the most practical person I knew. He balanced our checkbook to the penny. He planned our vacation routes 6 months in advance. Even when he was unhappy, he made plans to fix things. The note felt heavy in Vera's pocket. She pulled it out and showed it to Celeste, who read it twice before covering her mouth with her hand. "That's his handwriting, but..." Celeste stared at the paper. "He would never write something like that. Tobias always came back. From everything. Work trips, bachelor parties, the time he went camping with his brother and got food poisoning. He always came back." Vera studied the woman's face. Genuine confusion, not the practiced surprise of someone who knew more than they were saying. "I'm going to drive up to the retreat center this afternoon. Ask some questions. Can I come with you? I think it's better if I go alone first." Sometimes people are more open with law enforcement. Celeste nodded, though she looked disappointed. Detective? That note. The handwriting gets shakier toward the end. Like his hand was trembling. Vera looked at the note again. Celeste was right. The first word, I, was written in Tobias's usual controlled script. By back. The letters looked uncertain, almost childlike. The drive to Elevation Retreat Center took 40 minutes through increasingly dense forest. Vera had expected to see other cars on the access road, maybe some staff vehicles, but the gravel parking lot was empty except for a single white van with tinted windows. The building looked different up close, larger. The windows she'd noticed from the road were darker than they should be in the afternoon sun, as if something inside was absorbing the light. A hand-painted sign by the front door read "Transformation begins with a single step." Vera tried the door. Locked. She knocked, waited, knocked again. The sound echoed oddly, like the building was much bigger inside than it appeared from outside. "Hello!" A voice came from behind her. Vera turned to see a woman approaching from the side of the building. Mid-50s, gray hair pulled back in a loose bun, wearing flowing pants and a tunic that looked expensive but deliberately casual. She moved with the calculated serenity of someone who'd practiced being calm. "I'm Dr. Evelyn Thorne," the woman said, extending a hand. "I'm the program director here. Are you looking for information about our services?" Vera showed her badge. "Detective Castellanos, County Sheriff. I'm investigating a missing person. Tobias Crane attended a retreat here last weekend." Dr. Thorne's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "Of course. Poor Tobias. We were all very concerned when he left so abruptly." "He left? When?" "Sunday evening, during our closing ceremony. He seemed quite agitated, said he needed to get some air. We found his room empty the next morning." Dr. Thorne gestured toward the building. "Would you like to come inside? I can show you his room, if that would help." The lobby felt too large for the building's exterior footprint. High ceilings, polished concrete floors, inspirational quotes painted on the walls in flowing script. "The only way out is through. Your greatest fear is your greatest teacher. Who you were is not who you are becoming." "How many people attended the weekend?" Vera asked, following Dr. Thorne toward a staircase. 22, including Tobias. "We keep our groups small for maximum individual attention. I'd like contact information for the other participants. I'm afraid that would violate our confidentiality agreements. What happens at Elevation stays at Elevation, as we like to say." Dr. Thorne's smile looked practiced. "But I can assure you, everyone else completed the program successfully." They climbed to the second floor. The hallway was lined with doors, each marked with a number but no names. Dr. Thorne stopped at room 15. Tobias's room. Housekeeping found it empty Monday morning, but his belongings were still here. "We have them in storage, waiting for someone to claim them." The room was small and sterile. Single bed, desk, chair, one window facing the forest. Vera walked to the desk, running her hand over the surface. "This is where you found the note?" "What note?" Vera turned. "The note he left. I don't want to come back." Dr. Thorne's face went carefully blank. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're referring to. We didn't find any note." Vera felt something cold move through her chest. "The local police have it. It was found in this room." "That's strange. I personally cleaned out this room with our head of security. There was no note." Vera pulled out her phone and scrolled to the photos she'd taken of the note. She showed the screen to Dr. Thorne, who studied it with what looked like genuine surprise. "This is definitely Tobias's handwriting," Dr. Thorne said slowly. "But I can't imagine when he would have written it. Our weekend is designed to be transformative, not distressing. Tell me about the program. What exactly do you do here?" Dr. Thorne brightened, back on familiar ground. "We use cutting-edge psychological techniques to help people break through the limitations they've imposed on themselves. Guided meditation, intensive therapy sessions, trust exercises. The goal is complete ego dissolution followed by conscious reconstruction of the self." "Ego dissolution?" Many people are trapped by outdated versions of themselves. False beliefs, limiting narratives, fear-based thinking patterns. We help them temporarily let go of those constructs so they can build something better. Vera made notes, though something about the explanation made her uncomfortable. And Tobias was responding well to this process? He was one of our most engaged participants. Very committed to the work. Can I see where the sessions took place? Dr. Thorne hesitated for just a moment. Of course, though I should mention, we're preparing for another group arriving this evening. They descended to the basement level. Vera hadn't noticed basement windows from outside, but the space felt extensive. A long hallway lined with doors, each marked with letters instead of numbers. Room A, Room B, Room C. Individual therapy spaces, Dr. Thorne explained. Each participant works one-on-one with a trained facilitator. Vera tried the handle of Room A. Locked. Can I see inside? I'm afraid the facilitators are very particular about their spaces. Union rules, you understand. They continued down the hallway. Vera counted 12 doors before reaching a larger space at the end. This room was unlocked, and Dr. Thorne led her inside. It was set up like a theater with tiered seating facing a small stage. The walls were painted black, and the only lighting came from recessed spots focused on the stage area. This is where we hold our group breakthrough sessions, Dr. Thorne said. Very powerful work happens here. Vera walked to the center of the stage. The lighting created an odd effect, making the audience seating disappear into darkness, while leaving anyone on stage feeling exposed and isolated. What kind of breakthrough sessions? Participants share their deepest fears, their most shameful secrets, their greatest sources of pain. In a supportive environment, of course. The group witnesses their vulnerability and helps them process whatever comes up. Vera imagined Tobias standing on this stage, telling a room full of strangers about his private struggles. That sounds intense. Transformation requires intensity. You can't reach your authentic self through surface-level work. And Tobias participated in these sessions? He was very brave, shared some deeply personal material. Dr. Thorne's voice took on a slightly dreamy quality. By Sunday, he was unrecognizable from the man who arrived Friday. Something in her tone made Vera look up sharply. Unrecognizable how? Oh, lighter, more open, present in a way that most people never achieve. Dr. Thorne smiled. It's quite beautiful to witness someone shed their false self so completely. They returned to the lobby. Vera pulled out her business card. I'll need that contact information for Tobias's belongings. And if you remember anything else about his state of mind, please call me. Of course. Dr. Thorne tucked the card into her tunic pocket. Detective, if I may, have you considered that Tobias might have gotten exactly what he came here for? What do you mean? He said he wanted to be a different person. Maybe he succeeded. Vera drove back toward town with the windows down, trying to clear her head. Something about the retreat center had left her feeling claustrophobic, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Dr. Thorne had been cooperative, even helpful, but every answer had felt like it was concealing a larger truth. She pulled into a gas station halfway back and called the office. Valdosta, I need you to run a background check on the Elevation Retreat Center. Business license, permits, tax records, complaints. Also look into Dr. Evelyn Thorne and something called Metamorphosis Seminars. You got it. How did it go up there? Strange. They claim they never found a note, but we have it right here. Maybe someone else found it first? Family member, friend. Vera considered this. Celeste Crane said she hadn't been to the retreat center, and Tobias doesn't have any local family. She paused. Valdosta, how did that note get to us? Who turned it in? A pause while Valdosta presumably checked the file. Anonymous tip. Someone called Monday evening. Said they found it in room 15 and thought we should know. Anonymous tip? From who? Caller didn't give a name. Said they were a concerned citizen. Vera felt the cold sensation in her chest again. Pull the call recording. I want to hear it. Back at the station, Vera sat in the audio room with headphones on, listening to the anonymous tip for the third time. The voice was male, middle-aged, with a slight tremor that could have been nerves or something else. I found a note at the Elevation Retreat Center. Room 15. You should probably see it. Guy named Tobias Crane. Says he doesn't want to come back. The call lasted 38 seconds. The voice was careful, deliberate, like someone reading from a script. But there was something familiar about it that Vera couldn't place. She was pulling up Tobias's file when her phone rang. Detective Castellanos? This is Dr. Thorne from Elevation. I hope I'm not calling too late. Vera glanced at the clock. 9:47 p.m. What can I do for you, Dr. Thorne? I've been thinking about our conversation today, and I remembered something. Tobias did seem troubled during our Sunday morning session. He kept saying he was hearing voices. Voices. Internal voices. Negative self-talk, limiting beliefs. It's quite common during the breakthrough process. Sometimes people's old programming resurfaces as they're trying to let it go. Vera pulled out her notepad. What kind of things was he hearing? Oh, the usual. You're not good enough. You don't deserve happiness. You should just disappear. That sort of thing. We worked with him to recognize these as false constructs. Did he seem suicidal? A long pause. Not suicidal exactly. More like empty, hollow. Sometimes when people shed their false self, there's a period where they don't know who they are anymore. It can be disorienting. Why didn't you mention this earlier? I didn't want to violate his privacy, but given his disappearance, I thought you should know. After the call ended, Vera sat in the dark office, staring at Tobias's file photo. He looked ordinary, pleasant, the kind of person who held doors open for strangers and remembered his mother's birthday. Not someone who disappeared without a trace. She was about to leave when her computer chimed with an email from Valdosta. Background check results on Elevation Retreat Center. The business license was recent, filed 18 months ago. Dr. Evelyn Thorne was listed as owner and operator, with a PhD in psychology from a university Vera had never heard of. But it was the property records that made her sit up straighter. The retreat center building had been sold 3 times in the past 5 years. Previously, it had operated as Mountain View Recovery Center, a private psychiatric facility. Before that, it was Clearwater Institute, a residential treatment program for addiction. Both previous incarnations had closed following regulatory violations. Vera scrolled through the inspection reports. Multiple citations for improper patient monitoring, unauthorized therapeutic techniques, and failure to maintain proper records. The final report on Clearwater Institute mentioned concerning levels of patient dependency and experimental treatments not approved by state medical board. She printed the reports and drove home, but sleep didn't come easily. In her dreams, she stood on the stage in the basement theater while voices from the darkness whispered things about herself she'd never told anyone. Tuesday morning brought rain and a call from Celeste Crane. Detective, I've been going through Tobias's things, and I found something. Celeste's voice was strained. His laptop. He was researching the retreat center before he went. What kind of research? News articles about the building. About what happened there before. Detective, that place. People have gone missing from there before. Vera was already reaching for her car keys. I'll be right over. Celeste Crane lived in a small craftsman bungalow with a garden that suggested someone who paid attention to details. She led Vera to the kitchen table, where Tobias's laptop sat open beside a stack of printed articles. He started researching after he signed up, Celeste said. I think what he found scared him, but he'd already paid the fee. Vera scrolled through the browser history. Tobias had been thorough. Articles about Mountain View Recovery Center, including a 2019 piece from the local newspaper. Questions raised after patient deaths at private facility. The article detailed the deaths of 3 patients over an 18-month period. All ruled suicide, but family members had raised concerns about the treatment methods used at the facility. One family had filed a lawsuit, claiming their son had been psychologically manipulated before his death. There's more, Celeste said, pointing to another printed article. About the place before that. This article was older, from 2016. Clearwater Institute closes after federal investigation. According to the report, the facility had been using unauthorized experimental treatments, including sensory deprivation, sleep manipulation, and what investigators described as coercive therapeutic techniques. Tobias printed all of this, Celeste said, but he still went. When I asked him why, he said he'd paid too much money to back out. But I think maybe he was curious. Vera looked at the dates. Mountain View had closed in late 2020. Clearwater in 2016. Elevation Retreat Center had opened in early 2022. Same building, different name. Detective, what if Tobias didn't leave? What if something happened to him there? Vera studied the articles again. Pattern was emerging. Vulnerable people seeking help, experimental treatments, unexplained disappearances and deaths. And now Tobias, who'd written, "I don't want to come back," in handwriting that grew shakier with each word. "Mrs. Crane, I'm going to need to take this laptop with me, and I want you to stay away from the retreat center." "You think they're dangerous?" Vera gathered the printed articles. "I think they're hiding something." That afternoon, Vera drove back to Elevation Retreat Center with a warrant and 2 backup officers. The parking lot was no longer empty. A charter bus sat near the building entrance, and she could see people moving around inside. Dr. Thorne met them at the door, her serene demeanor intact despite the presence of uniformed officers. "Detective Castellanos, how can we help you today?" Vera handed her the warrant. "We need to search Tobias Crane's former room and any common areas he would have accessed during his stay." Dr. Thorne read the warrant carefully. "Of course, though I should mention we have a new group arriving today. I hope this won't be too disruptive. We'll be as quick as possible." They climbed to the 2nd floor. Vera noticed that room 15's door was propped open, and the space had been completely cleaned. Not just housekeeping clean, the kind of sterile emptiness that suggested a crime scene had been scrubbed. "When was this room last cleaned?" Vera asked. "Yesterday evening. We always deep clean between groups." Vera put on latex gloves and began examining the desk where the note had allegedly been found. She ran a UV light over the surface, looking for traces of ink or impressions from writing. Nothing. "Dr. Thorne, yesterday you said Tobias left his belongings behind. Where are they now?" "In our storage room. I can show you." The storage room was in the basement, near the theater space. Inside, Vera found a small cardboard box labeled T. Crane. It contained clothes, toiletries, a phone charger, and a leather journal. Vera opened the journal. The entries started Friday evening. Day 1, arrived safely. Room is small but comfortable. Other participants seem nice, though everyone's pretty nervous. Dr. Thorne says nervousness is normal. Means we're ready for change. First session tomorrow morning. Later, couldn't sleep. Keep hearing voices in the walls. Probably just the building settling. Old places make noise. Saturday's entry was longer. Day 2. Individual session this morning was intense. My facilitator, Dr. Blackwood, asked me to describe my worst fear. I told him about feeling invisible, like I don't matter to anyone. He said that's my false self talking, that my real self is much more powerful than I realize. Afternoon group session was hard. Had to stand on stage and tell everyone about the time I was bullied in high school. Made me feel like I was back there again. But Dr. Thorne says reliving trauma helps us release it. Evening. Something's wrong with my room. The walls feel too close. Keep hearing whispers. Ask the person next door, room 14, if they hear it too. But she just stared at me like I was crazy. Maybe I am. Sunday's entry was written in different handwriting. Still Tobias's, but the letters were larger, more childlike. Day 3. Dr. Blackwood says I'm making real progress. Says the voices I'm hearing are my authentic self trying to emerge. He gave me special meditation exercises to help the process along. I don't feel like myself anymore. When I look in the mirror, I see someone else. Someone younger. Someone scared. The group session tonight is supposed to be the big breakthrough. Dr. Thorne says I'll emerge completely transformed. But what if I don't want to be transformed? What if I like who I am? The voices are getting louder. They're telling me things. About this place. About what really happens here. I want to go home, but they won't let me use the phone. Say it would interrupt the process. The final entry was just one line, written in the shaky handwriting Vera recognized from the note. They're coming for me now. Vera showed the journal to the backup officers. Bag this as evidence. Detective. Dr. Thorne was standing in the doorway. Is everything all right? When did Tobias write in this journal? I wouldn't know. Participants are encouraged to process their experiences through writing, but we don't monitor their private reflections. He mentions a Dr. Blackwood. I'd like to speak with him. I'm afraid Dr. Blackwood is no longer with our organization. He left quite suddenly Sunday evening. Vera looked up sharply. The same night Tobias disappeared? A coincidence, I'm sure. Dr. Blackwood had some family emergency. These things happen. I'll need his contact information. Of course, though I believe he's traveling abroad. Difficult to reach. They searched the basement theater space next. Under UV light, Vera found traces of what looked like dried blood on the stage floor. Small amounts, but enough to be significant. Dr. Thorne, can you explain these stains? The older woman examined the spots with what appeared to be genuine surprise. I have no idea. Perhaps someone had a minor injury during one of our sessions. What exactly happens during these breakthrough sessions? Participants engage in intensive emotional release work. Sometimes people collapse from the intensity, or they might have psychosomatic reactions. Nothing dangerous, but very cathartic. Vera swabbed the stains for testing. I'll need a complete list of everyone who was in this room Sunday night. I'll have my assistant prepare that for you. They finished the search 2 hours later with Tobias's journal, the blood samples, and a growing list of questions. As they prepared to leave, Vera noticed a new group of participants gathering in the lobby. They looked like Tobias's description of himself. Ordinary people seeking something more from their lives. Dr. Thorne, given the circumstances, maybe you should consider postponing this weekend's program. Oh, I couldn't do that. These people have been planning this transformation for months. It would be cruel to deny them the opportunity. Vera watched the new participants. They looked eager, nervous, hopeful. Just like Tobias had probably looked 3 days ago. I may be back with more questions. Of course, we're always happy to cooperate with law enforcement. That evening, Vera sat in her home office with Tobias's journal and the case file spread across her desk. The blood samples were at the lab, but results wouldn't be back for days. She needed to find Dr. Blackwood. A search for Blackwood plus psychology plus Washington State turned up dozens of results, but none that matched. She tried expanding to neighboring states, then broadened the search to include alternative spellings. Finally, she found something. Dr. Silas Blackwood, licensed psychologist, specializing in intensive therapeutic interventions. Based in Portland, but his license had been suspended 6 months ago following allegations of professional misconduct. Vera called the Oregon State Board of Psychology and left a message requesting information about Dr. Blackwood's case. Then she called Portland PD. Detective Morrison. This is Detective Castellanos, County Sheriff up in Washington. I'm looking for information on a Dr. Silas Blackwood, suspended psychologist, possibly involved in a missing person case. Blackwood? Yeah, we know that name. He's been on our radar for a while. Runs weekend seminars, promises people he can cure their problems in 72 hours. We've had several complaints, but nothing we could make stick. What kind of complaints? People claiming he used hypnosis without consent, that he implanted false memories, that kind of thing. Problem is, most of his clients sign extensive waivers and they all pay cash. Hard to prove misconduct when people consented to experimental treatment. Vera felt pieces clicking together. Any missing persons connected to his seminars? Not officially, but we've had a few welfare checks over the years. People who attended his workshops and then seemed to just disappear from their normal lives. Family members get worried, but the missing persons always turn up eventually. Different city, different name sometimes, but alive. Different name, like they decided to become someone else entirely. Blackwood calls it authentic self-actualization. We call it fucked up. After the call, Vera stared at Tobias's journal again. The progression was clear when you knew what to look for. Normal anxiety on Friday, increased disorientation Saturday, complete personality fragmentation by Sunday. Her phone rang. Detective Castellanos? This is Dr. Naomi Barty from the State Psychology Board. You left a message about Silas Blackwood. Yes, thank you for calling back. I can't give you details about his case, but I can confirm that Dr. Blackwood's license was suspended following allegations that he was using experimental techniques without proper oversight or consent. The complainants claimed he had essentially performed personality reconstruction on unwilling subjects. Personality reconstruction? Think of it as extreme psychotherapy. The theory is that you can completely rebuild someone's sense of self by first breaking down their existing psychological structures. It's been tried before, usually with disastrous results. Could someone disappear as a result of this process? Psychologically? Absolutely. If you destroy someone's sense of identity and then rebuild it incorrectly, they might not remember who they used to be. They might not want to return to their previous life because they no longer consider it theirs. Vera thanked Dr. Barty and hung up. She was reaching for Tobias's file when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop looking for Tobias. He doesn't want to be found. Vera stared at the message. It had been sent from a burner phone, impossible to trace. She screenshotted it and called Valdosta. Someone doesn't want me investigating this case. Could be Tobias himself, or someone who knows what happened to him. What's your next move? Vera looked at the clock. 10:30 p.m. I'm going back to the retreat center. Tonight. That's not a good idea. They're starting a new session tomorrow. If they're doing something to these people, I need to stop it before it happens again. Take backup. Can't. If I'm wrong, I'll look like an idiot. If I'm right, backup might spook them into running. Vera, I'll call you every hour. If you don't hear from me by 6 a.m., send everyone. The drive to Elevation Retreat Center took longer in the dark. Vera parked a quarter-mile away and hiked through the forest, using her phone's flashlight sparingly. The building was lit up like a celebration, with all the windows glowing and cars filling the parking lot. Vera circled to the back of the building, looking for a way inside. She found a service entrance near what looked like a kitchen. The door was unlocked. Inside, she could hear voices coming from the basement level. Multiple people talking at once, some crying, others laughing. It sounded like a party, but wrong somehow. Too intense, too emotional. Vera made her way to the staircase and descended quietly. The voices grew clearer as she approached the theater space. Let go of who you think you are, a male voice was saying. That person was holding you back. That person was afraid. You don't need fear anymore. Vera crept to the doorway and peered inside. 20 people sat in the audience seating, all facing the stage. On the stage, a man Vera didn't recognize stood behind a podium. Tall, thin, with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Dr. Blackwood. It had to be. Your old life was a prison, he continued. Your old name was a chain. Your old personality was a lie you told yourself to feel safe. But you don't need safety anymore. You need truth. Vera pulled out her phone to record, but realized she had no signal inside the building. She'd have to rely on what she could see and hear. Now, Dr. Blackwood said, I want each of you to stand up and tell the group your name. Your real name. Not the name you came here with, but the name of who you really are. One by one, the participants stood. Vera expected to hear normal names, John, Susan, Michael. Instead, she heard things like void, echo, fragments, and nobody. When it was over, Dr. Blackwood smiled. Beautiful. You're all making excellent progress. Tomorrow we'll work on releasing your final attachments to your previous existence. By Sunday, you'll be completely free. The session ended, and participants filed out in silence. Vera waited until the theater was empty, then made her way back toward the service exit. Detective Castellanos. Vera spun around. Dr. Thorne stood in the hallway, no longer wearing her serene expression. You shouldn't be here. Where's Tobias Crane? Tobias completed his transformation successfully. He chose not to return to his previous life. I want to see him. That's not possible. Tobias doesn't exist anymore. Vera felt for her service weapon. What does that mean? It means he became who he was meant to be, just like all our participants do, if they're brave enough to let go completely. Behind Dr. Thorne, Vera could see Dr. Blackwood approaching, and behind him several other people she didn't recognize. Staff members, security, or something else. Detective, Dr. Blackwood said, you seem very attached to your identity, very rigid in your thinking. Perhaps you'd benefit from our program. Vera backed toward the exit. I'm a police officer. People know where I am. Of course they do. But Detective Vera Castellanos might decide she doesn't want to be a police officer anymore. She might realize that her badge and her gun and her sense of duty are just constructs holding her back from her authentic self. Vera ran. Behind her, she could hear footsteps, but she didn't look back. She burst through the service door and into the forest, crashing through underbrush toward her car. She was fumbling with her keys when her phone finally picked up a signal. 15 missed calls from Valdosta. She called him back while driving away from the retreat center as fast as the mountain roads would allow. Vera, thank God. We found Tobias. What? Where? Portland. He's alive, but... Valdosta paused. He says he doesn't know who Tobias Crane is. Vera met Valdosta at the Portland police station 3 hours later. Tobias sat in an interview room, looking exactly like his driver's license photo but somehow completely different. His posture, his expression, even the way he held his hands, it was like someone else was wearing Tobias's body. Mr. Crane. Vera sat across from him. I'm Detective Castellanos. Your wife is very worried about you. Tobias stared at her with polite confusion. I'm sorry, but I think you have me confused with someone else. My name is Roland. Roland what? Just Roland. I don't use last names anymore. They're artificial constructs. Vera pulled out the note from Tobias's hotel room. Did you write this? Roland, Tobias, examined the paper carefully. The handwriting looks familiar, but I don't remember writing it. It sounds like something the old me might have written, before I understood who I really was. The old you. I used to be trapped in someone else's life, pretending to be someone called Tobias, married to a woman I barely knew, working a job that meant nothing. But I've been liberated from all that now. Vera leaned forward. Tobias, your wife loves you. You have a life with her, a home, friends who care about you. Those weren't my relationships. They belonged to the false identity I was trapped in. I'm free now. Free to do what? Roland smiled with empty contentment. Free to be exactly who I am. Nothing more, nothing less. Vera tried for another hour, but it was like talking to a pleasant stranger who happened to look like Tobias Crane. Everything that had made Tobias himself, his memories, his attachments, his personality, had been surgically removed. Outside the interview room, she called Dr. Barty from the psychology board. Is this reversible? Theoretically, yes, but it would require extensive therapy, and there's no guarantee the original personality could be fully recovered. Think of it like a hard drive that's been reformatted. The data might still be there, but accessing it could take years. What about criminal charges? Against whom? If Tobias consented to the treatment and he's not claiming to be a victim, Vera understood. Tobias wasn't dead, so there was no murder. He wasn't technically being held against his will, so there was no kidnapping. He'd participated voluntarily in a program that had simply worked too well. She drove back to Washington the next morning. The retreat center was empty when she passed it. All the cars gone. The building dark. A for sale sign had appeared overnight in the parking lot. Dr. Thorne and Dr. Blackwood had vanished along with their staff. The charter bus was gone. It was like Elevation Retreat Center had never existed. Vera filed her report, but there wasn't much that could be prosecuted. Tobias was alive, technically unharmed, and claimed to be happy with his new identity. The blood on the stage turned out to be his own, likely from a minor injury during one of the sessions, but there was no evidence of foul play. Celeste Crane filed for divorce 6 months later. She visited Roland twice, hoping to reach some fragment of her husband, but the man who lived in Tobias's body remained a polite stranger who spoke about his previous life like reading someone else's biography. Vera kept the case file open, watching for similar disappearances, tracking Dr. Blackwood and Dr. Thorne through various aliases and business names. She found their pattern eventually. They moved every 18 months, changing names and corporate structures, but always targeting the same demographic. Vulnerable people seeking transformation. She tried to warn potential victims, but they rarely listened. They wanted change too badly to believe the warnings. And legally, she couldn't stop adults from choosing to participate in experimental therapy. The breakthrough came 8 months later, when Vera received a call from a detective in Colorado. "We've got a situation here. Wellness retreat. Missing participants. Sounds familiar." The new operation was called Rebirth Therapeutic Solutions. Different name, same building pattern, same psychological techniques. But this time, someone had left evidence. Vera found herself back in a basement theater, but this one still contained the remnants of the previous night's session. Video equipment, recording devices, and most importantly, a laptop containing detailed records of every participant's psychological breakdown and reconstruction. Dr. Blackwood had been meticulous in documenting his work. Session notes, psychological profiles, step-by-step procedures for what he called identity dissolution and replacement. The files revealed a systematic method for destroying personalities and rebuilding them according to specific parameters. But it was the final folder that made Vera's blood run cold. Successful transformations, deployment phase. Inside were profiles of former participants who had been psychologically reconstructed and then placed in specific locations. Tobias, now Roland, was listed as Asset R47, deployed Portland, monitoring role. According to the files, he'd been programmed not just to forget his old life, but to serve as an early warning system for Dr. Blackwood's organization. The other assets were scattered across the country, all living under new identities, all unconsciously reporting back to handlers they didn't know they were reporting to. Vera realized with growing horror that Dr. Blackwood wasn't just destroying people for the sake of transformation. He was creating an army of psychological zombies, people who looked and acted normal but had been programmed for purposes their conscious minds couldn't access. She was reading through the deployment files when she heard footsteps in the hallway above. The Colorado police were supposed to be watching the perimeter, but these footsteps sounded wrong. Too measured, too purposeful. Vera quietly closed the laptop and drew her weapon. The footsteps descended the stairs, moving directly toward her location like whoever was approaching knew exactly where to find her. Dr. Thorne appeared in the doorway, but something was different about her. The serene mask was gone, replaced by something colder and more calculating. "Detective Castellanos, you've been very persistent. The building is surrounded," Vera said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. "I know. We don't have much time." Dr. Thorne stepped into the room. "I want to show you something before we leave. You've seen too much to remain unchanged. But unlike our other participants, you won't have a choice in your transformation." Vera kept her weapon trained on Dr. Thorne while backing toward the emergency exit. "Why are you doing this? What's the point of destroying people's identities? We're not destroying them. We're optimizing them. Society is full of broken people clinging to dysfunctional personalities, afraid to change, afraid to become something better. We simply remove the fear by turning them into puppets, by making them useful. Do you know how many of our former participants now hold positions in law enforcement, government, corporate management? How many important decisions are influenced by people who don't remember choosing their current loyalties?" Vera felt sick. "How long has this been going on?" "Longer than you think. We've refined the process considerably since the early days." Behind Dr. Thorne, Vera could see movement in the hallway. More figures approaching, some in the flowing clothes of retreat staff, others in normal street clothes. But they all moved with the same eerie synchronization. "All former participants?" Vera asked. "All successfully transformed. They don't remember their previous lives, but they remember their purpose. Vera's radio crackled. Detective Castellanos, this is command. We've lost contact with the perimeter team. Dr. Thorne smiled. Your backup included 3 of our assets. They've been waiting for this opportunity. Vera ran. The emergency exit led to a stairwell that climbed to the building's main floor. Behind her, she could hear the transformed pursuing, their footsteps unnaturally coordinated. She burst into the lobby and headed for the front door, but more figures were visible through the windows. The missing perimeter team, now standing motionless in the parking lot. She tried her radio again. This is Detective Castellanos. Officer down, multiple officers compromised. Need immediate backup at Rebirth Therapeutic Solutions. Static answered her. Vera found herself trapped in the lobby as transformed individuals entered from multiple directions. They didn't speak, didn't threaten, just moved to block her escape routes with mechanical precision. Dr. Thorne appeared at the top of the staircase. Detective, you're fighting the inevitable. Everyone changes eventually. We're simply offering you the opportunity to choose how. I choose to remain myself. Yourself is a limitation. Detective Vera Castellanos is bound by rules, regulations, moral codes that prevent her from seeing larger truths. But we can free you from those constraints. The transformed moved closer, forming a tightening circle. Vera recognized some of them now, the missing perimeter officers, but also faces from the files she'd reviewed. People who'd disappeared from various wellness retreats over the past several years. What did you do to Tobias? Vera demanded. We gave him what he asked for. Complete transformation. Freedom from his previous limitations. Dr. Thorne descended the stairs slowly. He's much happier now. He's a shell. He's optimized. No longer burdened by unnecessary emotional attachments or counterproductive thinking patterns. Perfectly functional, perfectly content. Vera was calculating distances to various exits when she heard something that made her freeze. The sound of approaching sirens. Real ones, not the compromised local units. FBI, someone announced through a bullhorn. The building is surrounded. Dr. Thorne's expression flickered with what might have been annoyance. You called in federal assistance. I called in everyone I could think of. The transformed individuals continued closing their circle, but Vera could see uncertainty in their movements now. Whatever programming they'd received apparently hadn't included protocols for dealing with federal intervention. Let me make you an offer, Detective, Dr. Thorne said. Walk away now. Forget what you've seen here. We'll relocate, continue our work elsewhere, and you can return to your normal life. And if I refuse, then you'll discover what lies beyond the limitations of your current identity. Vera was about to respond when the front windows exploded inward. FBI tactical team members poured through the openings, weapons drawn, shouting commands. In the chaos that followed, Vera lost sight of Dr. Thorne. The transformed individuals seemed to freeze in place, like computers that had suddenly lost their programming. Several of them simply sat down on the floor and stared at nothing. It took 6 hours to process the scene. The laptop contained enough evidence to build cases against Dr. Blackwood and Dr. Thorne, if they could be found. But the real challenge was dealing with the dozens of psychologically reconstructed individuals scattered across multiple states. FBI psychologist Dr. Zara Okafor briefed Vera on the recovery process. Deprogramming is possible, but it's extremely difficult. These people have had their core identities essentially overwritten. Recovering their original personalities could take years of intensive therapy, and there's no guarantee of success. What about Tobias? We'll try. But Detective, you need to understand, the Tobias Crane who disappeared might be gone forever. The best we might achieve is helping Roland develop a new identity that incorporates some recovered memories. 6 months later, Vera sat across from Roland in a therapy facility outside Seattle. He looked healthier than when she'd found him in Portland, more present somehow, but still fundamentally different from the man in Tobias's wedding photos. I remember fragments now, he told her. Images, mostly. A woman with kind eyes. A kitchen with yellow walls. The feeling of being worried about something, but I can't remember what. That woman is your wife. Her name is Celeste. Roland nodded thoughtfully. I think I'd like to meet her. Not because I remember loving her, but because I'm curious about who I used to be. It wasn't the reunion Celeste had hoped for, but it was something. Dr. Okafor called it functional recovery. Roland would never be Tobias again, but he might become someone new who could build a different life on the foundation of recovered fragments. Dr. Blackwood and Dr. Thorne were never found. Their network of transformed individuals was eventually tracked down, but many couldn't be deprogrammed. They remained functional but hollow, living lives that felt borrowed from strangers. Vera returned to regular police work, but she never stopped watching for the signs: wellness retreats that promised too much, therapeutic programs that demanded complete surrender of identity, charismatic leaders who claimed they could remake people into better versions of themselves. She kept Tobias's original note in her case file, the one that read, "I don't want to come back." Now she understood what it really meant. It wasn't a suicide note or a message of despair. It was a warning, written by someone who realized he was losing himself and wanted to leave evidence of who he used to be. The handwriting had grown shaky not from fear, but from the psychological dissolution already beginning. Tobias had fought against the process long enough to scrawl 5 words that would eventually expose the entire operation. Sometimes Vera wondered how many other people had written similar notes that were never found, never investigated, never used to save the victims who came after. How many disappeared into new identities without anyone realizing they were gone? She'd prevented Dr. Blackwood and Dr. Thorne from continuing their work at that location, but the techniques they developed were documented, replicable. Someone else would try to use them eventually. Late at night, when she couldn't sleep, Vera would remember the theater in the basement and the synchronized movements of the transformed. She'd think about the careful precision with which personalities could be dismantled and rebuilt. And she'd check the locks on her doors twice before finally falling asleep, because she'd seen what happened when someone's sense of self became negotiable. The last time she visited Roland, he'd changed his name again. Not back to Tobias, but to something entirely new: Alex Crane. A compromise between who he used to be and who he'd become. "I'm building a life," he told her. "It's not the life Tobias would have chosen, and it's not the emptiness Roland accepted. It's something new. Are you happy?" Alex considered the question carefully. "I'm not sure I remember what happiness used to feel like, but I'm content. I'm curious about tomorrow. That feels like enough." Vera left the therapy facility with a strange sense of closure. Tobias Crane was gone forever, but Alex Crane was real. Different, reduced, but genuine in a way that Roland never had been. She drove home through the mountain passes, past the empty building that had once housed Elevation Retreat Center. It was still for sale, still dark, but Vera knew it wouldn't stay empty forever. Someone would buy it eventually. Someone with plans for the basement theater and the individual therapy rooms and the careful isolation that made psychological reconstruction possible. When that happened, Vera would be watching, because she'd learned something important in those dim hallways and soundproof chambers. The most dangerous predators were the ones who convinced their victims that being consumed was actually a form of liberation. And sometimes the only evidence they left behind was a note written in increasingly shaky handwriting, by someone who realized they were disappearing but fought long enough to warn whoever came looking. "I don't want to come back." 5 words that meant, I existed. I was real. Remember me. Sometimes that was enough. 2 years after the Colorado raid, Vera received a call that made her blood run cold. A detective in Montana, near Glacier National Park, had found something disturbing in an abandoned military facility. "We've got bodies," Detective James Hawkins told her over the phone. "But that's not the weird part. We also found what looks like a medical facility. Surgical equipment, monitoring devices, and rooms full of personal belongings. Hundreds of sets, all labeled with names and dates going back 20 years. Vera was on a plane to Montana within hours. The abandoned base sat in a valley surrounded by snow-capped peaks, invisible from any road. Hawkins met her at the perimeter, his face grim. "We found it because of a trail cam," he explained as they walked toward the main building. Hunter was tracking elk, noticed people coming and going at night. When he checked his camera, he saw something that didn't make sense. He showed her the footage on his phone. Grainy night vision images of people walking in perfect formation across the compound. No conversation, no individual movement. Just synchronized marching like soldiers who'd forgotten they were human. How many bodies? Vera asked. 17 so far. All in a underground crematorium. But here's the thing, they're not from the recent operation. Carbon dating suggests they died years ago. This place has been active for a long time. Inside the main building, Vera found herself in a more sophisticated version of what she'd seen in Colorado. Multiple basement levels, dozens of individual chambers, and a central control room that looked like mission control for the human mind. The personal belongings are down here, Hawkins said, leading her deeper underground. Room after room contained carefully cataloged items. Wedding rings, wallets, family photos, all sorted by date and labeled with clinical precision. The earliest items dated back to 1998, but it was the final room that made Vera's hands shake. Hundreds of driver's licenses, sorted alphabetically. Each one showed a face she might recognize, if she'd known to look for people who'd never officially gone missing. These aren't missing persons, she whispered. These are people who were reported as leaving voluntarily. Career changes, divorces, life transformations. No one ever filed reports because they left notes, made phone calls, seemed to choose their new lives. Hawkins nodded grimly. We found the communication logs. Every transformed individual maintained contact with their families for exactly 6 months after treatment. Just long enough to establish the new identity, then gradual withdrawal. By the time families lost contact completely, it felt natural. In the control room, they found Dr. Blackwood's real records. Not just session notes, but detailed psychological profiles, neural mapping, and something that made Vera's stomach turn. Success rate statistics. Look at this, Hawkins said, pointing to a chart on the wall. They've been refining the process for decades. Early success rate was only 30%. By the time they got to Elevation Retreat Center, they were at 96%. What happened to the failures? Hawkins gestured toward the crematorium levels. We think those are the ones who fought back too hard. The ones whose minds broke completely rather than accepting reconstruction. Vera thought about Tobias's journal, his final entry. They're coming for me now. He'd fought back, but not hard enough to break. Just hard enough to leave evidence. Detective Castellanos? A voice came from behind them. Vera turned to see a woman in FBI tactical gear approaching. Agent Sarah Chun, no relation to the victims, despite the name. We found something else, Agent Chun said. A server room. Looks like they were backing up personality profiles to some kind of remote location. And there's recent activity. The server room hummed with active equipment. Dozens of hard drives, satellite uplinks, and monitoring systems that were still receiving data. From where? Vera asked. Agent Chun pulled up a map on one of the screens. Red dots appeared across the globe, 23 locations on 6 continents. They've gone international, she said quietly. And from what we can tell, this Montana facility was just the training ground. The real operations are happening everywhere. Vera stared at the map, each red dot representing hundreds of potential victims. People who would wake up tomorrow not knowing who they used to be, living borrowed lives in service of an agenda they couldn't remember choosing. How do we stop something this big? We don't, Agent Chun said. We can't raid facilities in foreign countries. We can't prove crimes when the victims don't know they're victims. All we can do is warn people and hope someone listens. But Vera knew the truth was worse than that. The people running these operations had learned from every mistake, refined every technique. They'd created a system that was virtually invisible, recruiting their own investigators, placing their assets in positions of authority. How many cops, FBI agents, politicians, and judges were actually psychological reconstructions, reporting back to handlers they didn't know existed? The investigation of the Montana facility took 3 months. When it was over, they'd identified 247 victims spanning 2 decades, but Dr. Blackwood and Dr. Thorne remained ghosts. The international network continued operating, always one step ahead of law enforcement. Vera returned to her regular duties, but the case never truly closed. She'd become an expert on psychological manipulation, consulted on similar cases across the country. But for every facility they found, she suspected 10 more remained hidden. She established a protocol for identifying potential victims, specific patterns in missing person reports, unusual personality changes after wellness retreats, family members who reported loved ones acting different after therapy programs. The work was slow, frustrating, and often heartbreaking. Many victims couldn't be helped, their original personalities too thoroughly erased. Others, like Alex Crane, could build new lives from recovered fragments, but they would never be whole. Late one evening, 5 years after the Tobias Crane case, Vera received a package with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message written in familiar, shaky handwriting. "They're still out there, still taking people. I remember more now. My name was Dr. Patricia Novak, but before that I was someone else. Someone who tried to stop them. They made me forget, made me become one of them. But pieces are coming back." The note Tobias left. I put it there. I wanted someone to find it, to start asking questions. Part of me was still fighting, even when I didn't know why. I don't know how much time I have before they realize I'm remembering. But I wanted you to know you saved more people than you think. And there are others like me, fighting from the inside, leaving clues when we can. Keep looking for the notes. Keep asking the questions. Some of us are still in here waiting to be found. The letter wasn't signed, but Vera knew who had written it. Dr. Evelyn Thorne, or whoever she had been before they transformed her into the serene director of Elevation Retreat Center. Vera added the letter to Tobias's case file, now thick with similar communications from around the world. Anonymous tips, unsigned letters, mysterious phone calls. All from people who'd had their identity stolen but were slowly, painfully remembering who they used to be. She'd learned that consciousness was more resilient than the manipulators believed. Even after the most sophisticated reconstruction, some spark of authentic self remained buried but not destroyed. And sometimes, in moments of clarity, that spark could send out signals. A note, a warning, a plea for help. Vera kept all of them in her files, evidence of lives stolen but not completely erased. Each one represented someone who'd fought back in the only way they could, leaving breadcrumbs for investigators who might never come. But she had come. She was still coming. And she would never stop looking for the signs that someone inside was trying to get out. In a world where human identity could be rewritten like software code, Vera Castellanos had become the keeper of deleted memories, the voice for those who'd been silenced, the detective who refused to accept that anyone was truly gone. Because sometimes, late at night when she reviewed the files, she could hear them calling out from their borrowed lives. I existed. I was real. Remember me. And she did remember. She remembered them all. The case that had started with 5 words on hotel stationery had become something much larger. A recognition that the human soul was both more fragile and more resilient than anyone had imagined. I don't want to come back. But sometimes, with enough determination and care, they could. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes it was everything.